What's the best real-life example of the butterfly effect? Jeri Ryan's 7 of 9 divorce led to Barack Obama becoming president. She was married to Republican Jack Ryan, Obama's opponent in the 2004 Illinois Senate race. Her divorce files became public, and it was revealed that Jack Ryan had wanted her to perform sexual acts with him in public in sex clubs. This tanked Ryan's campaign, and Obama won the seat, then went on to become president 4 years later. Which then led Obama to mock Trump during a dinner, and likely inspiring him to run for the presidency. So 7 of 9 getting a divorce gave us President Donald Trump. I see this come up from time to time, and I think Obama was always destined for the presidency. In 1998 I was working on some homework sitting at my dinner table, and my dad yelled for me to come into the TV room. I walked in and my dad was watching C-SPAN. There was a younger black man I did not recognize talking about wealth inequality. My dad looked at me and said, "You're looking at the future first black president of the United States." I have never heard my dad talk about anyone or anything in terms of race, let alone race and politics, in my entire life, before or since that day. I will never forget that moment, and I think there are certain people who are destined for things. I failed a couple of uni courses and had to restructure my degree a little. As a result, I took a couple of classes that were not on the radar initially. In one of these classes, I picked a seat that happened to be next to an exchange student. 13 years and a kid later, we are living in her home country. All highly unlikely if I didn't fail a couple of exams. My girlfriend was hosting a charity fundraiser party, and I decided to bring along a batch of tablet, like Scottish fudge. I got ready, prepped all the shiz, got out into my car, started driving, and remembered I had left the tablet at home. I had already left, and was just gonna leave the tablet, but it was for charity. I turned around and went home and got it. I was a little late, but oh well. Anyway, at the party, a lady comes up to me and starts telling me that the tablet tasted fantastic. It was just like her grandfather used to make it. We strike up conversation and everything goes pleasantly. During the conversation I mention that I'm soon gonna be out of work, but it's okay, I have plans. Because I was delighted she had enjoyed my tablet so much, I wrote her out a copy of the recipe. It's not hard to remember. It's basically just sugar and temperatures times. I went to give it to her, and she was visibly touched. Anyway, a few weeks later I get a phone call from her husband offering me a job. I accepted it. I loved it. I worked my way up within the business, and now I'm very happy to say that I feel I am doing pretty well. Maybe not the best example of the butterfly effect, but who knows where I would be now if I'd never turned back and got that tablet. All that, and you didn't include the recipe? He'll probably post it once he is out of a job. In 1894, a priest saved a 4-year-old boy from drowning in an icy river. The boy was a young Adolf Hitler. There have been a number of reports of people saving or sparing Hitler's life. An Irish man reportedly rescued him from an angry crowd, and Hitler himself claimed that a British soldier allegedly pointed a gun directly at him before deciding to spare his life. Given Hitler's respect for the UK and his insistence that they join him even during WW2, the second is somewhat believable. My theory is that there is a constant stream of time travelers, some who are trying to kill Hitler, and others stopping them from killing Hitler. What if Hitler was the best alternative? What if instead of Hitler we had someone who was more competent ruling Germany and pulling the anti-Semite Nazi agenda? Maybe it's some huge time traveler argument in the future, whether or not to kill Hitler. The reintroduction of wolves to Yellowstone increased the number of beaver dams and a whole bunch of other stuff. The following is an excerpt from an article from the Yellowstone website. Wolves are causing a trophic cascade of ecological change, including helping to increase beaver populations and bring back aspen and vegetation. When the gray wolf was reintroduced into the greater Yellowstone ecosystem in 1995, there was only one beaver colony in the park, said Doug Smith, a wildlife biologist in charge of the Yellowstone Wolf Project. Today, the park is home to 9 beaver colonies, with the promise of more to come, as the reintroduction of wolves continues to astonish biologists with a ripple of direct and indirect consequences throughout the ecosystem. A flourishing beaver population is just one of those consequences, said Smith. What happened, said Smith, is that the presence of wolves triggered a still unfolding cascade effect among animals and plants, one that will take decades of research to understand. It is like kicking a pebble down a mountain slope where conditions were just right that a falling pebble could trigger an avalanche of change, Smith mused. Bill Cosby is indirectly responsible for the creation of Rick and Morty. Justin Roiland made an internet cartoon series called House of Cosbys, which was about a bunch of Bill Cosby clones. Bill Cosby had his lawyers send a cease and desist letter when he found out about it. In protest, Roiland created The Real Adventures of Doc and Marty, poking fun at the legal issues by using obvious parodies of Doc Brown and Marty McFly from Back to the Future. These characters eventually evolved into Rick Sanchez and Morty Smith. If Bill Cosby never sent that cease and desist letter, Rick and Morty may have never existed. U.S. railroads are exactly 4 feet 8.5 inches wide. Why did they pick such an odd number for that? Well, the same people who built the first railways in America happened to be wagon makers, and their tools were all designed to make wagons that were 4 feet 8.5 inches wide. Why that size for wagons? Because that is the size they made them in England. So why did they make it that size in England? It's because all of the roads already had ruts in them that were this size, and if you made wagons smaller the wheels would snap trying to fit into the ruts, so they made the wagons the right size to fit. So why were the ruts that size? Well, 2,000 years ago, when the Romans conquered most of Europe, their war wagons were the ones that made the first roads, and so every wagon after that had to be made to the same size as those ancient Roman war chariots. So why were the chariots that size? Turns out 4 foot 8.5 inches is the minimum size needed to fit the butt end of 2 Roman war horses in the front of their chariots. Now, remember the US space shuttle? Remember those tall white rockets on either side of the main orange tank? Those are solid rocket boosters, and they are made in America but have to be shipped to Cape Canaveral via railway. The engineers who designed the space shuttle had wanted those boosters to be fatter, but the railway went through several tunnels which were just wide enough to accommodate a rail car with a width of 4 feet 8.5 inches. This means that a critical design feature of one of the most complicated machines ever built by mankind was decided over 2,000 years ago based on the width of a horse's ass. Peter William Lount. Chernobyl. Turning off safety features to test other safety features that then failed because they turned off some of the wrong safety features and then they tried to fix it in the wrong order, causing the worst nuclear disaster in world history. There were many butterfly effects that could have stopped the disaster, but it was a systematic failure. That design of reactor was made to fail. There was no metal pressure vessel. Radioactive steam was used to turn the turbines. The water pumps had independent power only as a backup, which was the reason they needed to do the test. The control rods had graphite tips, and I still don't understand why. The Ottomans blocking trade routes from Europe to Asia led to explorers attempting to get to Asia by sailing west and discovering the Americas. I'd seen this posted in a similar thread but thought it was pretty fitting for this one. The invasion of Iraq by the US might never have happened if not for a ship of Cuban immigrants sinking and leaving a boy named Elian Gonzalez to be rescued by fishermen and taken to Florida. In 1999, this boat carrying a dozen or so Cuban immigrants sank, killing the mother of Elian, and putting him into the hands of relatives of his in Florida. The incident became an international story and Elian's father, who was still in Cuba, wanted him back. What would normally be a clear-cut custody case, the last 50 years of Cuban-American relations complicated the process. Because of Castro's heavy-handed rule, most Cuban Americans believed sending Elian back was unthinkable, but the letter of the law is clear, and the U.S. government orders Elian back to Cuba. His relatives refuse and choose to keep him, creating quite a volatile situation. An armed border patrol team stormed the house to take Elian by force, and although no one was hurt, PR surrounding the raid was a shitstorm. The Cuban Americans, mostly in Florida, disliked then-President Clinton and, as one might imagine, were happy election year was up, with Al Gore, Clinton's VP, running against GWB. In one of the closest elections in U.S. history, GWB wins out, with many attributing the win to Florida going a little extra red than normal. This is a very controversial topic and I won't take sides, but if Gore had won Florida he would have won the election and most likely would have, at least tried, to prevent the invasion of Iraq. Obviously there are no guarantees in this world, but it's interesting to consider the possibility that if Elian had drowned, or if the U.S. had allowed him to stay stateside, Cubans in Florida might have voted more blue, Gore might have won, and we might never have touched Iraq. If not for that kid, my brother wouldn't be named Elian. Damn. JFK. Born with one leg shorter than the other, meaning he had an unstable back. Fast forward to that day in Dallas, and had he not been wearing a back brace to keep him upright, he would have been able to duck out the way of the second bullet. JFK may have survived if his legs were the same length. As a kid, I was ill a lot and missed quite a bit of school. I had the option to repeat the year and get better grades or carry on and somehow finish. I took the option to retake the year. Having had the meeting with the principal, I decided to change one of the subjects I was doing as an afterthought, as art would be more of a laugh and easy subject. To cut a long story full of coincidences short, I ended up enjoying it, going to uni, meeting my wife, having a career as an illustrator, and now have a family. If I hadn't made that sudden decision, my life would be very, very different now. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.